Thony is waiting when she's suddenly surrounded by four-wheelers. Desperate, she tries to open a door but it's locked. Trapped, she pulls a pendant from her pocket just as a masked man fires a warning shot into the air. He demands to know where she got it. When she answers Armando Morales, she is struck across the face. Hey there, welcome to the recap of The Cleaning Lady Season 3. Let's dive in. 2 days earlier, Thony tries to keep Luca's spirits up, assuring him that Fiona will be home soon. But her focus shifts when she receives a text from Armin. Everything is set for tonight. Meet me in 2 hours. She asks Chris to watch Luca, but he resents her, blaming her for Fiona's deportation. In the Philippines, Fiona video chats with Jazz, who wishes she could be there for her junior prom. Their call is interrupted when Thony calls with urgent news. She's arranged for Fiona to be smuggled back to the US on a flight landing in Manila in 16 hours. Fiona hesitates, fearing the risk, but Thony reassures her. Nadia is house hunting, planning to buy a property in cash. Her plans are interrupted when she learns Armand is flying out on the private plane, something she never authorized. At the hangar, Thony arrives to find drugs being loaded onto the plane. When she demands answers, chaos erupts. Armed men storm in, and a shootout ensues. Nadia arrives just in time to pick up Thony, but Armand is left behind. As they escape, Nadia demands the truth, but Thony insists she knows nothing beyond wanting to bring Fiona home. Furious, Nadia blames Thony for everything and kicks her out of the car. In the Philippines, Fiona visits the market with her parents when she unexpectedly runs into Paolo, a familiar face from her past. A flashback reveals a younger Fiona hustling a man in a pool game. When the man refuses to pay and turns violent, Paolo steps in to defend her. Back in the present, Paolo jokes that the money Fiona won that night helped her get to America, and that he never got a goodbye from her. Fiona apologizes before they part ways. Later that day, as Fiona, Lolo, and Lola prepare dinner, their home is attacked by armed vigilantes demanding Thony's whereabouts. Lolo is shoved to the floor as Fiona insists Thony is still in America. The attackers leave, but the message is clear. There is now a bounty on Thony for smuggling medicine out of the country. Fiona warns Thony that they won't stop coming. Back in the US, the FBI raids Nadia's casino. ASAC Catherine Russo pressures Nadia to reveal Armin's location, taunting that Armin always chose Thony over her. Nadia refuses to cooperate and leaves to check a hotel where Armin might be hiding. Instead of Armin, she finds his passport, still untouched in its hiding place. Thony calls Fiona with bad news. The plan to bring her home has failed, and Armand may be dead or captured. Fiona refuses to give up hope, but Thony is less optimistic. Still determined to bring Fiona back, Thony reaches out to the other cleaning ladies for help. Roxy gives her the contact of a smuggler named Angel. Seeking answers, Nadia and Thony visit Armand's estranged parents, Teresa and Eduardo, hoping for information. Eduardo coldly dismisses his son as dead to them, and when they ask that the dad contact the other side of the family that deals with Cartel for help, he refuses. But Teresa, desperate for news, gives Thony a Cartel pendant. Chris, hearing that Thony's plan to bring Fiona back has failed, begins packing, determined to leave. Sensing something is wrong, Luca tells him things will get better once Fiona returns. Chris hugs him, telling him to take care of Thony. In Manila, Fiona finally tells Paolo the truth. He has a son, Chris. She admits she lied about Chris's father to get him to America. She begs Paolo to spread the word that she is not involved in drugs, hoping to prevent further attacks. Fiona returns home to find Chris waiting for her. He vows to protect their family, and she fears how they'll get back to the US. Thony meets with Angel, asking him to smuggle Fiona across the border. He refuses unless Fiona agrees to transport drugs. Thony rejects the offer but seizes the moment to ask about the pendant Teresa gave her. He says it's for a rival cartel, and Thony pays him to set up a meet. Thony is then taken to the location from the opening scene. After being struck, she is tied to a chair and interrogated. Jorge, a cartel member, demands to know why she's looking for them and how she knows Armand. She insists she's just a cleaner, but they already know her as the doctor. He offers to spare her life if she hands over Armand. Instead, she confesses that she used their smuggling routes to transport medicine for her clinic. A black bag is placed over her head, and she is taken to meet Ramona, also known as Sin Cara. Thony pleads with Ramona to help find Armin. Ramona agrees to put her men on it, but Thony remains skeptical, reminding her that it was her people who attacked them in the desert. Ramona explains that they didn't know what Armin meant to her. Then comes the shocking revelation. Armand is actually Sin Cara's nephew. Ramona is from the side of the family that Armand's father, Eduardo, has long rejected. With this newfound connection, Thony is released and returns home to Luca. Trying to regain some normalcy, Thony and Luca make strawberry pancakes together. But their moment of peace is shattered by a knock at the door. Standing there is Susan Redman, Luca's caseworker from Child Protective Services. Susan explains that when Thony was arrested in Season 2, Luca was placed in the system. Even though all charges against Thony were dropped, Luca still has a mandatory medical checkup. Thony is blindsided. She had no idea about the appointment. Thony takes Luca to the hospital, but she's not allowed in the room with him. Susan from CPS explains that after today's exam, they will conduct a home assessment and random wellness checks before a judge decides if Luca can stay with her. Though Susan admits they prefer to keep children with their parents, Thony's rights are still under review. She suggests Thony find a witness to support her at the hearing, like Fiona. After the test, Thony goes to Angel, hoping he can reconnect her with the cartel. But instead of answers, she's grabbed at gunpoint. They demand to know who Sincara is, but she refuses to talk. Eventually, they let her go with a warning: she is never to come back. When Thony gets home, she's shocked to find Ramona there with Luca. Spooked, Thony demands to know why she came to her house. Ramona fires back. Wasn't it Thony who went to Angel to set up another meeting? Thony asks about the search for Armin, but Ramona remains vague, insisting they'll find him. Seizing the moment, Thony explains that her sister-in-law was deported and needs to return to the US, but Ramona scoffs. Thony has a lot of nerve asking for help after compromising her smuggling routes. Right now, the only person Ramona cares about bringing back safely is her nephew. Desperate, Thony promises that she can make anything disappear, just as she did for Armin. Ramona considers it. She might have a job for her. In the Philippines, Fiona, her parents, and Chris run into Paolo. When Chris hears Paolo and his friends speaking in Tagalog, he recognizes the word anak, meaning child. Suspicious, he asks Fiona if Paolo is his father. She hesitates before admitting the truth. Furious, Chris storms off. He had always wanted to know his dad, and Fiona lied that he was a one-night stand. Later, she confides in her parents, admitting she only wanted to give Chris a better life, one that wasn't possible in the Philippines. They reassure her that she raised a great son. Ramona accepts Thony's offer to work, in exchange for smuggling Fiona and Chris back. Jorge takes her to her assignment, only for Thony to realize it's Angel's hideout. Sincara has already killed Angel and his crew. He informs her of her real job. This time, she won't just be cleaning a crime scene. She has to cut up and dispose of the bodies. Thony panics, insisting that this isn't what she does. But Jorge shuts her down. This is the deal. As she cleans up the scene, she hears police approaching. Thinking fast, she spills paint across the floor to mask the blood, then escapes unnoticed. Later, Thony finds Jorge picking up his daughter Violetta from school. She confronts him about the near miss, but he brushes her off, tossing her a hoodie to cover her blood-stained clothes. A school worker briefly speaks to Jorge before he turns to Thony with a chilling warning. She needs to stay away from his daughter. At the police station, Nadia tries to report Armand as missing, but before she can, she receives a call that forces her to rush out. When she arrives at the morgue, she is shown a dead body. But it isn't Armin. Jorge appears, warning her to stop looking. He knows she has been calling hospitals and morgues but going to the police station. That was a dumb move. If she does it again, he promises his next visit won't be friendly. Paolo invites Chris over. As they cook together, Paolo tells Chris not to be mad at Fiona. Too many others would have been too afraid to do what she did for him. She left her family and everyone she knew for him to have a better life. He admits he was a mess back then, but he met Chris at the right time. Fiona listens from a distance before finally joining them. Later, Jorge hands Thony the travel details for Fiona and Chris. When she asks if her debt is cleared, he gives her a chilling answer. It doesn't work like that. They own her now. Thony worries that if she's caught doing illegal work, she'll lose Luca for good. Jorge is unmoved. She should be grateful to be alive. After he leaves, Thony calls Fiona. Their flight is tonight. Fiona breaks the news to her parents, Chris, and Paolo. Chris is saddened that they can't all leave together. Before saying goodbye, Paolo hands Chris a gift, telling him to open it at home. At the airport, he opens it to find a wad of cash and a note that reads, "It's for my son." Jorge confronts Ramona, furious that she exposed him to Thony while he was busy keeping Nadia from exposing her. Ramona dismisses his concerns. It was an opportunity for them to get better acquainted, and she didn't know Thony would show up at the school. Jorge warns her that Thony is a liability. Luca is sick, her husband is dead, her family was attacked. She is desperate. He thinks the best place for her is a grave in the desert. But Ramona refuses. Armin would never forgive them if she died. Jorge reminds her that Armin and Thony stole from them and got their people killed. But Ramona defends her nephew. He had no idea they were using her routes. It was Eduardo who turned his back on them, not Armand. She insists that when Armin returns, he'll remember the bond they once had. Jorge isn't convinced. Nadia tells Thony about her encounter with Jorge, though she doesn't know his name yet. He warned her to stop asking questions about Armand. Thony warns her not to tell anyone, but Nadia has a theory. Armin is being held by the cartel. Thony refuses to get involved. It's too dangerous. Nadia, suspicious, questions whether Thony is hiding something. Thony insists she wants to find Armin, but has to protect her family first. Later, Nadia makes a bold move. She calls ASAC Catherine Russo. Fiona and Chris embark on their dangerous journey to the U.S., smuggled across the border with a group of immigrants. Before departure, the coyote confiscates their phones and forces them to leave behind anything that doesn't fit in a small bag. Just as they are about to board the truck, 2 other passengers, Giselle and her daughter Camilla, are denied entry as their money only covers 1 person. Seeing their desperation, Chris decides to use the money his father, Paolo, gave him to pay for Giselle. The mother and daughter are allowed to join, and the journey begins. Thony leaves Luca at home with his Jazz and heads to her cleaning shop, only to find it vandalized. Go Home is spray-painted across the wall. She cautiously moves through the building, clutching a rock for protection. Hearing a door shut, she grabs a mop, ready to defend herself, only to find Jeremy Dolan, a handyman sent by the landlord to fix a broken window. He apologizes for the hateful graffiti, and she thanks him before leaving for her next job. At a warehouse, Dante orders Thony to clean several vehicles. While working, she notices blood in one of the vans, and deduces that a woman recently gave birth inside. When she insists on helping, Dante reminds her that she's there to clean, not interfere. But Thony ignores him and searches the warehouse, finding the mother, Soledad, in distress. When her condition worsens, Thony defies orders and sneaks her out, bringing her to the cleaning shop for urgent care. Just as Thony treats Soledad, she gets an unexpected visitor, Susan from Child Protective Services. Susan threatens to call the police, but Thony warns that if she does nothing, Soledad will die. Reluctantly, Susan assists. Once the mother and baby are stabilized and taken away in an ambulance, Susan reminds Thony that practicing medicine without a license will go into her CPS report. But Thony turns the tables, pointing out that Susan physically aided in the mother's care, which could get them both in trouble. Realizing this, Susan agrees to keep quiet. Jorge and Ramona argue about how to handle Armin's disappearance. Jorge believes their current smuggling routes are compromised and wants to change them, but Ramona insists Armin can still help them expand operations. Jorge thinks she's being naive. Their conversation is interrupted when Dante reports that Thony took Soledad and the baby. Jorge volunteers to find her. Later, Ramona confronts Thony, furious that she disobeyed orders. Thony argues that saving the mother's life strengthens Ramona's reputation, but Ramona dismisses her, revealing that a doctor was already scheduled to see Soledad the next morning. She warns Thony never to cross her again. Nadia meets with ASAC Catherine Russo, offering to help take down the cartel in exchange for immunity for herself and Armin. Russo reveals police body cam footage showing Armin being dragged into a van at the airport hangar. Nadia is relieved to see he's alive, but can't identify the man who took him. Russo suggests Thony may have answers. Secretly, Nadia records the footage on her phone. Later, she tracks down Glenn, who supplies vehicles for smuggling. She shows him the footage and points out a logo on the van. Glenn admits he had the vehicle but refuses to disclose who bought it. Jorge corners Thony, warning her to obey orders or risk losing Luca. As she leaves his car, Nadia arrives, showing her the footage of Armand's abduction and asking if the man is part of Ramona's crew. Jorge overhears and denies any connection. Nadia, furious, realizes Thony has been working for the cartel the whole time and lashes out for not telling her sooner. As she leaves, Jorge warns Thony that Nadia will be a problem, implying she may have to be silenced. Thony persuades him to let Ramona meet with Nadia first. As Fiona, Chris, and the others near the U.S. border, the coyotes force them into an underground tunnel. Camilla panics, but Fiona reassures her. When they emerge, a nun welcomes them, telling them they are now in the U.S. and that the church is a sanctuary. However, as they leave for their next location, Border Patrol arrives. Fiona and Chris flee into a nearby boutique. When an officer questions Fiona's citizenship, she quickly claims to be a U.S. citizen. Just as the agent demands to see her papers, a dispatcher calls for assistance outside, pulling the officers away. As the group regroups, the coyotes refuse to let Giselle enter the van, saying it's already full. They put Giselle in another vehicle that they promise is heading to the same destination. Later, when the truck stops, Chris hears Camilla screaming. The coyote is trying to assault her. Chris intervenes, and Fiona jumps in to help. Though they manage to stop him, the coyote escapes, driving off with the rest of the immigrants, leaving Fiona, Chris, and Camilla stranded. It's unclear whether the smugglers intentionally separated them or simply took advantage of the situation. When Thony goes back to work at the warehouse, she spots something alarming. The truck from the police footage, the one used in Armin's abduction, is right in front of her. She confronts Jorge, but he insists they just received a shipment of the trucks. Nadia plays her last card. She tells Russo she's willing to turn over the cartel and Thony in exchange for immunity. But she soon realizes Russo never intended to let Armin walk free. Russo blames Armin for the death of her former partner, Garrett, and has no intention of giving him a deal. Realizing she's been tricked, Nadia refuses the offer. If she wants to save Armin, she'll have to find another way. Thony anxiously waits for Fiona and Chris to arrive on the Coyote's van, only to discover they never made it. When she demands answers, the driver hesitates before admitting he last saw them during a pit stop in the desert. There's no other van on the way. Furious, she demands Dante find them. My girl already done 2 cleanups for this, and you mean to tell me her family was left in the desert? Lost in the unforgiving desert, Fiona and injured Chris and Camilla follow power lines, hoping they'll lead to civilization. Instead, they find only an endless expanse of sand. Chris, dehydrated and exhausted, voices his fears, but Fiona insists they'll make it. Still, when she stumbles upon a child's abandoned shoe, doubt creeps in. Camilla spots something through an old pair of binoculars, water tanks in the distance. Summoning their last bit of strength, they reach the tanks, only to find them locked. Chris collapses. Thinking fast, Camilla places a piece of cactus against his lips, using its moisture to revive him. Fiona, realizing they won't last much longer, leaves in search of help. Determined to find Armin, Nadia meets with a bounty hunter, Logan, in a remote location. She hands him a photo of Armin, along with $100,000, promising an additional $1 million if he locates him. The Coyote points at a map, showing where the group stopped. Thony urges Dante to order him to go back, but instead, Dante immediately alerts Jorge. But when Nadia returns to the club, Jorge and Ramona are waiting. They confront her about hiring outside help, warning that bringing in too many people could cause problems later. Leave it to us, she urges. Before leaving, Jorge hands Nadia a business card in case she needs to contact them. Back home, Thony is confronted by JD, Fiona's ex. He demands to know where Fiona and Chris are, but she refuses to tell him. JD warns her not to miss her CPS appointment with Susan. She assures him she'll be back in time. When he offers to go with her, Jazz insists he's needed at home. Thony rushes back to the warehouse and forces her way into a Coyote vehicle, determined to search for her family herself. But before they get far, Jorge intercepts them. He orders the vehicle to turn back and tells Thony to come with him. When she refuses, he fires a round into the ground. The Coyote panics, tosses her bag out, and drives away, leaving her with Jorge. Desperate, Thony pleads with him. What if it was your daughter, she asks. Surprisingly, Jorge relents. Instead of taking her home, he drives toward the desert. They arrive at the last known location of Fiona and Chris, but there's no sign of them. Jorge suggests calling Border Patrol, but Thony refuses. If they're caught, they'll be deported back to the Philippines, making everything they've been through meaningless. Then, she spots a dead body. Reality crashes down on her. She begins to cry, blaming herself for getting Fiona deported before it even happens. Jorge urges her not to think that way. People have survived in the desert for a week, he reassures her. That's when Thony sees it, Chris's cap. Russo confronts Nadia about a $1 million liquidation of her assets. She tells Nadia that the FBI is freezing her assets until the case goes to trial. Later, Nadia returns to her office to find the safe open. Inside, she finds Armin's photo with a chilling note scrawled on the back, $100 million. Frantic, she picks up her phone and dials Russo, but later decides against it and dials Ramona instead. Meeting with Ramona, Nadia explains the FBI's freeze. Ramona offers to help her regain access to her money, but not through legal means. Before Nadia can respond, an incoming call flashes across her screen, Auntie Kate. Ramona asks who it is. She says it's just someone she doesn't want to pick her call. Ramona suspects it's more, but leaves. Fiona's search for help finally pays off when she stumbles upon a group of undocumented immigrants. They take her to their Coyote truck, but she refuses to leave without Chris and Camilla. Moved by her desperation, they agree to help. Soon, the trio is reunited, and they continue their journey. As Jorge and Thony search, they are ambushed by an armed man and woman, not Border Patrol, but vigilantes, who believe it's their duty to keep undocumented immigrants out of the U.S. It quickly becomes clear that they are the ones who locked the water tanks Fiona and the others found earlier. They would rather let immigrants die in the desert than let them cross. Jorge overpowers the man, knocking him unconscious. In the chaos, Thony grabs a gun from Jorge's jeep. With the woman restrained, Thony forces her to use her radio to locate the Coyote van. Once they get the information, they prepare to leave. The woman begs not to be left behind. Jorge shoots up her vehicle, stranding her. Thony, still unwilling to be cruel, gives her a bottle of water. Jorge immediately shoots a hole in it. Let her have a taste of her own medicine. On the road, Fiona, Chris, and Camilla are in the Coyote van when gunfire erupts. The vigilantes found them. The driver is killed, sending the truck skidding to a stop. Smoke and exhaust fumes fill the enclosed space. The back gate won't open. As the air grows toxic, Fiona desperately uses a screwdriver to poke holes for oxygen, but she collapses. Thony and Jorge arrive just in time. They force open the gate. Jorge pulls Fiona from the truck and administers CPR. She gasps for air. Later back home, JD, Luca, and Jazz throw a small welcome home surprise for Fiona and Chris. A woman arrives to take Camilla to meet her mother. Chris sneaks in a few selfies with her before giving her his number. She kisses him on the cheek before heading off. Nadia receives another call from Auntie Kate. Turns out it's Russo, but Nadia plays it off as a butt dial. "Don't ever call me again," she warns before hanging up. A new message pops up. Ramona wants to meet. Jorge later drops off Thony's van. She thanks him for everything, and for the first time, there's an unspoken trust between them. Then, she makes a revelation. She recovered a vial from the truck she cleaned earlier, the same one used in Armand's abduction. She had it tested. It's devil's breath. He promises to look into it before leaving. On a rooftop, Nadia meets Ramona. In the distance, an explosion erupts. Ramona doesn't even flinch. She casually informs Nadia that she burned down one of her properties. Insurance money, to cover Armand's ransom. After barely surviving the desert, Fiona takes a long shower, the weight of her ordeal washing over her as she cries. Later, Thony carefully tends to her wounds, and Fiona makes a heartbreaking admission. She finally understands what Thony has endured all these years. The fear of losing a child had always been Thony's burden. Jorge follows up on the vial of devil's breath Thony gave him. His search leads him to a rundown spot filled with junkies, where he tracks down a man who identifies Armand's captor as a dealer named Dragan. After a bribe, the man directs Jorge to a construction site. He finds Dragan, distracting him while Dante hits him from the back, and he's taken. Jorge calls Thony to say the lead panned out, but there was a complication. At the warehouse, Ramona is furious that Jorge kidnapped Dragan. She warns him that this will make it look like he's trying to free Armand without paying the ransom, something that could get him killed. When Thony arrives, she identifies Dragan as the man who took Armand. But before they could get more answers, Dante went too far with the torture, accidentally killing him. With their best lead dead, Ramona insists they have another way to get Armand back. The captors have reached out, and they will set up an exchange once they receive payment. Thony is skeptical, arguing that they'll take the money and run. Ramona warns her not to question her authority. She orders Thony to start cleaning up the mess, but Thony refuses. She has to get home to Luca, who is scheduled for an interview with Susan before his upcoming court hearing. At home, JD comforts Fiona, wondering if their lives would have been different if he had stepped up when they were younger. He assures her that all that matters now is that she's safe, and he refuses to lose her again. He even invites her to move in with him. But just as things seem to settle, panic erupts. Luca is missing. Thony searches the house frantically, but he's nowhere to be found. Chris insists he saw him an hour ago, and the family splits up to look for him. Thony immediately suspects Ramona, calling Jorge to demand answers. Jorge doesn't think his sister would take Luca, but Thony isn't so sure. After all, she just defied Ramona's orders. Jorge tells her to keep searching while he checks with Ramona. When CPS agent Susan arrives for the scheduled interview, Thony lies, claiming Luca is with Fiona and their car broke down. But the lie quickly unravels when Fiona and JD return without him. With no other choice, JD tells Susan the truth. Luca has been missing for 3 hours. JD recalls seeing Dante watching the house in a black BMW and provides the plate number. Thony protests, but Susan takes over, issuing an Amber Alert for Luca and giving Dante's details to the police. Jorge is handling Nadia's insurance claim, using his legal expertise to push it through. But as he reports the progress to Ramona and asks if she took Luca, which she denies, they both notice the Amber Alert on his phone. Shortly after, Dante is stopped by police and arrested. As Thony anxiously waits for news, Fiona demands the truth about what's going on and who Thony has been working with. Finally, Thony confesses she has been working with the cartel. She reveals that Armand's family is part of the Sincara cartel, something Fiona struggles to process. Then, a breakthrough. Fiona urges Thony to think carefully about Luca's behavior before he disappeared. Suddenly, it clicks. She knows where he is. Thony rushes to the aquarium, where she finds Luca staring at the turtles. He confesses that he ran away because he was scared the lady, Susan, was going to take him away. Thony hugs him tightly, promising he doesn't have to run again. She immediately calls Susan to cancel the Amber Alert and invites her to complete the interview. But Susan isn't satisfied. She tells Thony that not knowing where her son was for hours is a serious problem, one that an interview won't fix. Instead, she'll see Thony in court tomorrow. Later that night, Thony worries that CPS will use the Amber Alert against her. JD suggests speaking with a contact at the station to see if Dante's charges can be dropped, but it turns out Dante's arrest wasn't just about Luca. his car was searched, and now he's being held on other charges. Realizing the Amber Alert will damage her case, Thony turns to Jorge. She pleads with him to get it expunged, knowing that it's within his power. Her emotional appeal moves him, and he advises her to use that same speech in court the next day. That night, as Thony packs Luca's bag, Fiona asks if she's planning to run. But Thony isn't running. She's preparing for the worst. If the court rules against her, Luca might not come home. The next morning, Thony enters the courtroom, flanked by Fiona, Chris, and Jazz, who speak on her behalf. However, Susan presents damning evidence. Thony once administered an unauthorized drug to Luca, and now there's the Amber Alert, proof that she lost track of her son. Just as the judge prepares to deliberate, Jorge arrives with paperwork confirming that the Amber Alert has been officially stricken from the record. He argues that the alert was made in error, but the judge isn't pleased with the last-minute theatrics. Still, the most pressing issue remains. Was Thony reckless with her son's health? Thony takes the stand and delivers a heartfelt speech, explaining why she gave Luca an unapproved drug. In the Philippines, that medication was legal, and it was the only thing that could save him. She had no choice. She did what any mother would do to save her child. The judge ultimately rules that Luca will remain in Thony's custody, but under CPS supervision. Outside, Thony tearfully embraces her son, as Jorge watches from a distance. Jorge returns home to find Ramona overseeing the installation of a new painting. He informs her that he took care of Dante's arrest. But Ramona is livid. Dante was their only contact for Armand's ransom exchange. Because of his arrest, they missed the call that could have brought Armand home. Jorge questions why they keep giving in to the kidnappers' demands when they don't even know if Armand is alive. But Ramona sees another problem. Thony is becoming a liability. As Thony watches Luca sleep, a car pulls up outside. She steps out and finds Jorge waiting. But this isn't a friendly visit. He brings bad news. Dante's arrest ruined their chances of getting Armand back. And now, if Thony doesn't back off, she could lose everything, including her son. Thony is full of emotions as she takes pictures of Luca on his first day of school. While she and Fiona fuss over him, Luca just wants to be a regular kid. Chris agrees, telling Thony she's making too big a deal out of it, but she insists his immune system still needs to get stronger. Fiona reassures her, if the doctor approved him going to school, it means he's ready. Their morning takes a chaotic turn when the bathroom overflows, leaving Luca knee-deep in sewer water. Ramona and Jorge receive an audio recording of Armand, confirming that he's still alive. Dante assures them it's legitimate proof of life. A flashback reveals Ramona's deep bond with Armand. Years ago, she gifted him a toy car resembling her Cadillac, promising him a real one when he turned 18. But their moment was interrupted by Eduardo, who disapproved of her influence, calling her gifts tainted by dirty money. He threw the car into a fire pit and ordered her to leave by morning. Back in the present, Ramona orders Dante to bring Nadia to her. At school, Thony anxiously drops Luca off with his teacher, Mrs. Rodell. Sensing her nerves, Luca gives her his toy turtle, saying she needs it more than he does. Jorge arrives, assuring her it gets easier. When she worries that CPS could find out about their contact, he reminds her she once showed up at his daughter's school. This is just payback. He hands her paperwork that could help remove Luca from the system. She asks what's in it for him. Jorge admits he wants Armand out of the cartel, something only Thony can convince him to do. While talking, she notices Ramona's man watching her. Jorge warns her. This time, Ramona isn't taking any chances. Ramona, excited for her nephew's return, shows Nadia the home she has prepared for her and Armand. She even has a horse brought in for healing. But this generosity comes with strings attached. Ramona wants Armand to join her cartel. Nadia, wary, insists they need a quiet place away from distractions. Ramona warns that whoever took Armand may come after him again. When Nadia demands to speak directly to the kidnappers and be present for the exchange despite Jorge's warnings, Ramona agrees but makes it clear, if something goes wrong, it's on Nadia. Back at the house, Jeremy unexpectedly shows up, offering to fix the bathroom plumbing. Fiona finds it odd but allows him to help. While it feels too convenient, Thony then shares a major update. Armand may be coming home today. Fiona urges her to consider a relationship with him, reminding her that she deserves to be loved. But their moment is interrupted by a shocking discovery. Fiona hands Thony Dante's arrest report, which reveals he was found with 16 vials of devil's breath. That's why he wasn't released, despite not being caught with Luca. Examining the evidence, Thony realizes the writing on Dante's vials matches the one she found before. The horrifying truth dawns on her. Dante was involved in Armand's kidnapping all along. Determined to follow this lead, Thony and Fiona decide to visit the address on Dante's arrest report. Fiona suggests telling Jorge, but Thony thinks he might be in on it. Grabbing an antitoxin, they prepare to leave. However, Ramona's man is still watching their house. Just as they consider their next move, Jeremy announces that the toilet is fixed. They convince him to give them a ride to Dante's place. At the location, Jeremy drops them off, promising to pick them up later. Inside the apartment building, they make a disturbing find: Armin's bullet-riddled jacket near a group of kids playing basketball. One of the boys, Kyle, agrees to lead them to where he found it but takes them to his sick grandfather, Alvin, instead. Thony diagnoses him with BPPV, an inner ear condition, and shows Kyle how to treat him. Grateful, Alvin feels much better. Before leaving, Kyle reveals that he saw a man throw Armin's jacket in a dumpster. They persuade him to show them where the man lives. Nadia is on a call with the kidnappers, finalizing the ransom exchange. Dante expresses doubts, but Ramona calms him down. He's only uneasy because he's not in control. Nadia secures an agreement for a safe trade, but she insists on being there in person. Jorge, preparing Armand's Cadillac for his return, confronts Ramona about favoring Armand over him. She denies it, claiming she gave Armand the Cadillac so he could dream big, but she always knew Jorge had his own grand ambitions. He recalls a time when he and Armand stole her car for a joyride, joking that maybe they could do it again once Armand is back. Ramona smiles. He's warming up to the idea of Armand rejoining their family. Breaking into the apartment, Fiona waits outside while Thony searches for Armin. She trips, breaking several vials of devil's breath and accidentally inhaling the drug. Hallucinating, she clings to an illusion of Armin, vowing to never let him go. Fiona snaps her back to reality. Armin isn't there. They rush back to Jeremy's truck, where Fiona administers an antitoxin. Just then, they spot men putting Armin in a vehicle. Jeremy suggests calling the police, but Thony calls Nadia instead, warning her that Dante is involved in Armand's kidnapping. Nadia refuses to believe her and hangs up. However, a flicker of doubt creeps in, and she secretly texts Thony her location. On the way to the exchange, Jeremy's truck catches up with the kidnapper's vehicle. As they pass, Thony and Armin lock eyes for a split second. Suddenly, unmarked police cruisers block the road. The kidnappers veer off, leading to a high-speed chase. Gunshots ring out as a kidnapper aims his gun at Thony. But Armin manages to knock the weapon away just as the vehicle goes over a cliff. Thony stares in horror as the police approach. The time they spent together flashes before her eyes. R.I.P. Adon Canto. Armand is gone, and Thony is drowning in guilt. She believes she could have done more to save him, but Fiona insists there was nothing she could have done. She reminds Thony that this was Dante's doing, and urges her to walk away before it's too late. But there's no time to grieve. Armand's funeral is today. Luca makes a mess searching for his toy dumpster truck for show and tell but can't find it. At the club, Ramona thanks Nadia for handling everything, acknowledging that the Velorio wake won't ease their pain, but at least they won't have to suffer alone. As Jorge joins them, he hands Nadia an urn with Armand's ashes. He explains that the feds ran the kidnappers off the road, but have no idea why they were there in the first place. His contacts have come up empty. No one knows who tipped off the FBI. Ramona isn't convinced. Only 3 people knew about the ransom drop: herself, Dante, and Nadia. When she presses Nadia about the phone call she took during the exchange, Nadia admits it was Thony. She gave her the location. Now, Ramona and Jorge have to wonder. Did Thony betray them? Jorge insists Thony didn't call the feds. Instead, he suggests that the feds may have offered Nadia a deal when they froze her assets. He wouldn't put it past her to save herself, especially now that she's trying to throw Thony under the bus. But Ramona suspects Jorge is just being protective of Thony. One thing is certain: whoever betrayed them will pay. Back at home, Fiona tries to convince Thony not to go to the wake, but Thony argues that avoiding it would make her look suspicious. Jeremy arrives, bringing gumbo, though it's clear he just wants to check on them after everything that happened. Thony keeps things vague, telling him they don't even have all the answers themselves. Jeremy then asks about their security, offering to install some old cameras from a previous client. Fiona agrees. As Jeremy sets up the cameras, he notices the smoke alarm's light is out and offers to check the battery. While checking, he begins to ask Fiona questions about what happened, but she hesitates. To ease the tension, Jeremy shares a personal story. His father was a construction worker who helped search for survivors after 9/11, but when the structure collapsed, he was trapped inside. Touched, Fiona opens up as well, admitting that Thony would walk into a burning building for her. Thony arrives at the wake, but Jorge immediately warns her to leave. Ramona believes she called the feds, and he can't protect her if she stays. Thony refuses to back down, adamant that she had nothing to do with it. Nadia approaches, demanding to know if Thony called the feds. Thony stands her ground, insisting she wasn't wrong about Dante. But Nadia warns that if Ramona truly believes Thony is responsible for Armin's death, they're both in danger. Nadia later runs into Isabel, who hands her a childhood keepsake, a toy Cadillac that Armin had given her for safekeeping years ago. When Ramona and Jorge see it, they are stunned. It's the same toy Ramona gifted Armin as a child, the one his father had thrown into the fire. Unbeknownst to them, Armin had secretly salvaged it and kept it all these years. In private, Ramona tells Jorge that there's no need to keep Armand's accessories around anymore, meaning Nadia must go permanently. Jorge asks her to go easy on her. Thony speaks to Ramona, insisting she didn't call the FBI. Ramona asks who she suspects, and Thony points the finger at Dante. But Ramona refuses to believe it. At least, not yet. She promises to look into it after the wake. As Thony leaves, she sees something shocking. Dante kissing Ramona. Panicked, Nadia rushes to her office, frantically searching for Russo's business card, the only evidence that she ever spoke to the feds. Once she finds it, she burns it. Jorge catches her and accuses her of destroying evidence, but she deflects, showing him a painting Luca made for Armand instead. Nadia reflects on how Armand always wanted to be Thony's hero. She realizes she lost him long before now. Jorge talks about his dead wife too, admitting that people never realize life is too short until it's too late. He apologizes for doubting her. Later, Thony gives Jorge Dante's arrest report, showing that he was caught with vials of devil's breath, the same drug used in Armand's kidnapping. She's convinced Dante was involved, and Ramona seems to be blinded by her relationship with Dante. Jorge, however, warns her to stay out of Ramona's love life. Still, Jorge takes the report to Ramona, who immediately assumes Thony must have doctored it. But Jorge reminds her, this is an official arrest report. It can't be faked. Fiona calls Thony, saying she's coming to the wake. Before Thony can stop her, Dante appears, demanding she come with him. She abruptly ends the call. Dante takes her to a secluded area to talk, but Fiona secretly follows. Suddenly, Jorge and Ramona appear. Ramona, cold and calculating, tells Thony that she was right. You can't trust anyone in this business. Then, without hesitation, boom. Ramona shoots Dante in the head. Betrayal has a price, she says, before turning to Thony. Clean this up. She leaves with Jorge. Fiona, horrified, steps out from her hiding spot. Thony tells her to run, but Fiona refuses, helping her clean up instead. Afterward, as they're about to leave, Thony takes a moment to go back upstairs. She says a final goodbye to Armin. She tells herself it's over now. Her debt is paid, and she's finally free of this life. But if you have been watching from season 1, you know Thony by now. Armand's parents arrive, and his father, Eduardo, confronts Ramona, blaming her for his son's death. Jorge, angry, reminds Eduardo that Armand left because he didn't want to be around him. But Eduardo drops a bombshell. When Ramona took Jorge in, they did try to contact him. Ramona, or rather Marina, had threatened them. Jorge is devastated. Ramona never told him. Thony, who witnesses the confrontation, she asks Eduardo why he called Ramona Marina. He says that's her middle name. Thony immediately makes a connection. Marina. That's the word Armin scratched onto the table when she and Fiona broke into Dante's apartment. Thony realizes the unthinkable. What if Dante took Armin because Ramona ordered it? She needs to find out so she can move on from Armin's death. Now she's back in the game. Took all of 2 seconds. Jorge, enraged and heartbroken, sets Dante's trailer on fire after killing everyone inside. He plants a gun in Dante's hand, framing him for everything. Later, he finds Nadia crashing out. He holds her, telling her that no matter what, there was nothing she could have done to bring Armin back. Back home, Thony finds Luca still looking for a toy for show and tell. She hands him the half-burnt toy Cadillac, the same one Armand saved from the fire years ago. Take care of it, Luca. Thony wakes up from a nightmare, haunted by the possibility that Ramona orchestrated Armand's abduction. Fiona tries to rationalize it. Perhaps Armand was hallucinating under the effects of devil's breath when he scratched Marina into the table. But Thony isn't convinced. She wants justice if Ramona was responsible. Meanwhile, she's brought Jeremy into their cleaning crew for a new job. Fiona, however, has a different plan. She secretly meets with Agent Russo, asking for protection. Russo agrees, but only in exchange for key evidence on Armand's captors and the cartel. Ramona and Jorge are at odds over security concerns. Jorge refuses to let his daughter Violetta attend a party, still wary after Dante's betrayal. He doesn't know who in their crew can be trusted anymore. He urges Ramona to cancel the art exhibit she has planned for that night, but she refuses. She believes the family must project strength, not weakness. Determined to get answers, Thony tells Fiona she plans to visit the apartment where Armin was held captive. Fiona, already worried about their safety, admits she has been talking to Russo. Thony is upset, fearing it will only put their family in greater danger. Chris arrives and asks Thony if she can reach out to a coyote to check on Camilla, who has suddenly stopped responding to his texts. Fiona warns against it, but Thony promises she'll see what she can do, and she's also committed to turning over any evidence she finds in the apartment to Russo. When she gets there, she finds Ramona and Jorge already inside. Suspicious, Jorge pulls a gun on her. How did she even know about this place if she wasn't working with the feds? Thinking fast, Thony reveals a mirror where Armand had written Marina and accuses Ramona of killing him. Ramona finally confesses. Dante had told her they'd caught the man using their route, only for her to realize too late that it was Armin. She apologizes for the pain she's caused and walks away. But Thony knows that exposing Ramona like this has consequences. She pleads with Jorge to stop Ramona before she decides to kill her. Later, Ramona invites Nadia to leave town with her. But their conversation is interrupted when Jorge arrives, demanding to know why she never told him about Armand. Hearing the truth, Nadia is horrified. Ramona had him all along. She accuses Ramona of being responsible for Armand's death and walks away. As Ramona reaches for a glass of water, it slips from her trembling hand. Jorge later presses Ramona further. Why did she do it? She confesses that she thought if she staged a kidnapping, she could save Armin and become his hero, ensuring his loyalty to the cartel. Jorge urges her to see a doctor, reminding her that she hasn't had a checkup in a long time. Her reckless actions are putting them all at risk. At their cleaning job, Thony tells Fiona that Ramona knew about the abduction all along. Fiona is fed up. They already had an out, and Thony is dragging them back into danger. Jeremy approaches, offering to finish up, but Fiona refuses. Instead, she insists Thony stays before she leaves. Chris is excited about his date with Camilla. But Camilla never shows up. Chris calls her, but there's no response. Jazz jokes that he got stood up, until Chris receives a chilling video. Camilla is being grabbed by a woman. At the cleaning site, the lights suddenly go out, and chlorine gas floods the warehouse. Jeremy and Thony try to escape, but the door won't budge. Jeremy is injured trying to shut off the gas. Thinking fast, Thony drags him by his hair into a separate room, then staples and glues his head wound shut. They search for alcohol to counteract the gas, eventually triggering an explosion that blows the warehouse doors open. Outside, they realize someone tampered with the door. It wasn't an accident. Thony finally tells him it's the Sin Cara cartel that tried to kill her. Jeremy suggests Thony stop fighting the cartel and instead make herself valuable to them. That way, she can find their weakness and use it to her advantage. Nadia returns to the club in high spirits, ready to celebrate buying a house. But the FBI, led by Russo, arrives and arrests her for insurance fraud. They suspected her of blowing up the sportsbook for the insurance payout, but her mistake was transferring the money in her own name. In jail, Ramona visits Nadia, offering help. But Nadia would rather rot than take it. Jorge, however, has a different idea. He proposes an alliance. Ramona betrayed them both, and she's more vulnerable now. If Nadia agrees to split her money 50-50, he'll get her out and reclaim her assets. Despite surviving an attempted hit, Thony refuses to back down. She cleans up and attends Ramona's art exhibit, confronting her head-on. She knows Ramona is trying to kill her. But instead of fighting back, Thony makes an offer. She sees Ramona's tremor and other symptoms. As a doctor, she recognizes that Ramona is sick and dying. She can save her, just as she saved Luca. If Ramona spares her, she'll help her live. Ramona remains unfazed. Later, she punishes Simon, the man she sent to kill Thony, for his failure. Without hesitation, she slits his throat. Back home, Fiona tells Thony about Camilla's video. They suspect the same woman who picked Camilla up when she crossed the border is the one holding her now, and she's likely working for the cartel. Since Camilla once saved Chris's life, they owe it to her to return the favor. But as they talk outside, the real bombshell drops. Jeremy's security cameras, which he claimed were for their safety, are actually being used to spy on them. If you suspected him before, here's your proof. Jeremy is FBI. Luca plays in his school's basketball game, dribbling down the court before passing to a teammate. Ramona takes a seat beside her, watching the game unfold. She reminds her of how Luca's illness once held him back and attributes his progress to Thony's relentless efforts. Now, she needs that same fight from Thony to keep her alive. As Luca scores, he rushes to hug his mom, and Ramona gives him a high five. Jeremy updates Russo on his findings, but she warns him to stay away from FBI headquarters so his cover remains intact. He hands over the intel he's gathered. Attorney Jorge has long been associated with the Sin Cara cartel, and his newest client is Nadia. But Jeremy has a theory. Jorge is Sin Cara. Ramona confronts Jorge about his secretive meeting with Nadia in jail. He refuses to ask for permission, reminding her of her mistake with Armando Morales. She tries to reassure him that they are a team, but Jorge has other plans. He intends to build his own empire using Nadia's money and connections in Las Vegas. But Ramona isn't one to be left behind, and his defiance won't sit well with Sin Cara. Jorge visits Nadia in jail, but she's growing impatient. He promised to get her out, yet she's still behind bars. He insists it's taking time. They need to convince a judge. Nadia doesn't want to wait. She tells Jorge to post her bail, and she'll handle Judge Oliver Gordon herself. Later, Jorge is at Nadia's club when she approaches, dressed to seduce. Oliver soon joins them, unaware of what's coming. Nadia takes her time making him comfortable before motioning for 2 women, Odette and another, to join them. Jorge secretly records Oliver's interactions with the women. Later, they confront Oliver with the footage. He realizes he's being blackmailed. Nadia and Jorge offer him a choice: discretion in exchange for her charges being dropped. At first, it seems like the plan worked. But then, the incriminating pictures of Oliver leak online. And it wasn't Jorge. It wasn't Nadia. It was Ramona. Ramona was never going to let Jorge break away. She burned the judge to ensure that he wouldn't get access to Nadia's money he planned to use for his own venture. Thony prepares to go see Ramona, but Fiona tries to stop her. She warns Thony against getting involved, reminding her of all the pain Ramona caused them and Armin. But Thony insists, if she can help Ramona, she can keep them safe. When Thony arrives at Ramona's house, Ramona displays her x-rays, explaining that her nephrologist believes she has kidney disease, but Thony points out the absence of creatinine in her blood work. Instead, she suspects an autoimmune disorder. As she continues assessing the results, Thony notes an unusual estrogen level, suggesting Ramona has been pregnant before. Ramona says there was a time she wanted to have children, but she got to know she was never meant to, and demands Thony focus on the real problem, finding a cure. Jorge struggles with his daughter Violetta, who misses her mother and refuses to be consoled. As Thony leaves Ramona's home, Jorge offers her a bottle of water and admits that it's painful to feel powerless as a parent. Thony reminds him that children need to experience both good and bad emotions to grow. Watching Thony's house through hidden cameras, Jeremy sees Fiona leave with Luca and Chris. Seeing his opportunity, he sneaks inside and tampers with the kitchen faucet. As he's finishing up, he hears Thony approaching and rushes out the back door. Thony hears the sound of a door closing. By the time she checks, Jeremy is already in his truck. Later, as Thony researches Ramona's symptoms, Chris and Fiona arrive. They have searched everywhere for Camilla, but have not seen her. He mentions a list of businesses associated with the cartel where Camilla might be, including a bottling company. Remembering the bottled water Jorge gave her, she mentions Bandera Bottling Company, and Chris says yes. With that lead, Fiona and Chris decide to check it out. Thony, frustrated by the leaking faucet, calls Jeremy for repairs. When he arrives, he subtly probes her about the cartel, asking if their leader is sick. Thony refuses to give any information. As he fixes the leak, he mentions that a leaking pipe was the issue, triggering a realization in Thony. When Thony goes to get money to pay Jeremy, he swiftly takes pictures of her research and sends it to Russo. Outside, he calls Russo to see if she received them. She confirms something major. The research shows ovaries. Sin Cara is a woman. Cross-referencing Jorge's list of clients, they make the connection. Sin Cara is Ramona. Thony returns to Ramona and delivers the diagnosis: lead poisoning caused by bullet fragments left inside her body after she was shot. Ramona insists the bullets were removed, but Thony explains that tiny fragments may have gone unnoticed. Using an LVF detector, she pinpoints their locations. Ramona asks that she remove it immediately and forces Thony to operate on the spot, threatening her and her family's lives if she refuses. Thony prepares ketamine to sedate her, but Ramona demands to stay awake. Thony slices into her. She removes several fragments, but the last one is dangerously close to a vein. Ramona numbs herself with tequila before ordering Thony to proceed. A guard puts a gun to her head to keep going, but she accidentally severs the vein. As Ramona loses consciousness, Thony hesitates, momentarily considering letting her die. Jorge enters just in time. Snapping back into action, Thony orders him to put on gloves. Together, they manage to stop the bleeding and close the wound. When Ramona wakes up, she finally acknowledges Thony's skill, now understanding why Armin trusted her. Jorge confronts her. She exposed the judge to prevent him from accessing Nadia's money and striking out on his own. In response, Ramona promises to get Nadia's charges dropped herself if Jorge would include her in his plans and not leave her. When Jorge informs Nadia of Ramona's move, she admits she wishes Ramona had died. But Jorge reveals that Ramona secured her release. Nadia asks if he plans to crawl back to Ramona. He suggests letting her think she's in control for now. Nadia says they make a dangerous team. At Bandera Bottling Company, Fiona and Chris investigate. Fiona speaks with a woman who knows Giselle, but the foreperson mistakes her for a worker and orders her to put on a hairnet. To cause a distraction, Chris pulls the fire alarm. Amid the chaos, Fiona and several workers are forced into a van. Before leaving, she hands Chris her keys so he can follow them. Chris tails the van to a house. Fiona, inside, tries to gather information. She sees Camilla's shirt, but before she could check further, a man orders her to leave, but before she does, she secretly drops her phone number. Once back in the van, she reassures Chris that they're getting closer to the truth. Camilla and Giselle were definitely here. At home, Thony tidies up when she spots a partial shoe print on Luca's toy gummies. Suspicious, she checks their security footage. Nothing seems off. Unconvinced, She visits her neighbor Mr. Pierce and asks to review his security cameras. What she sees confirms her worst fear: Jeremy sneaking into her house when no one was home. She snaps a photo of him on the screen. It all clicks. Jeremy is FBI, and he's been lying to her from the start. Thony tells Fiona about Jeremy, believing the cameras he installed were for spying. To confirm, they stage a fake meeting. Thony claims she's meeting a cartel member at a coffee shop. As they watch from a nearby location, Jeremy's truck pulls up, proving he is listening in. Fiona dismisses him as a creep, but Thony knows better. He's FBI. Worse, if Ramona finds out, Thony is as good as dead. Fiona wants to remove the bugs, but Thony insists they leave them in place to keep Jeremy unaware of their discovery. Thony checks Ramona's vitals. She's getting better, but her grip on Thony only tightens. Ramona tells Thony she wants her more involved in the organization, but Thony pushes back. She wants out. Ramona argues that power is the only thing that can protect Thony and her family, and she's not ready to let her go. Nadia, finally free, secures the house she wanted and embraces the fresh start she's been dreaming of. Jorge takes her to a vast plot of land, revealing his grand plan to build a hotel, with Nadia as the face of it. Nadia quickly realizes it's more than just business. Jorge intends to use it for money laundering. He reassures her that once they unfreeze all her assets, they'll be unstoppable. At Ramona's art gallery, she's approached by a potential buyer, Catherine Russo. But Ramona recognizes her from Nadia's club. When she asks what Russo does, "I'm FBI," she says. Then she calls Ramona by her true name, Sin Cara. Though Ramona hides her shock, Russo continues, pointing out how art galleries are notorious for laundering money. Ramona dismisses the accusation, saying only a few bad actors tarnish the industry's reputation and she can check around if she wants to. But Russo isn't asking for permission. She already has a search warrant. FBI raids sweep across Ramona's operations, including Jorge's law firm and even her own home. The pressure mounts, and paranoia seeps in. Ramona tells Jorge this isn't just about intimidation. Russo called her Sin Cara to her face. Jorge reassures her they've covered their tracks, but Ramona wants answers. Someone within their circle is leaking information. Jorge warns against reacting impulsively. It signals guilt. But Ramona isn't listening. Ramona obtains a file from the FBI, revealing a deal Russo once drafted for Nadia. It was the agreement Nadia initially considered when Armand was kidnapped, where she'd betray Thony and the cartel for immunity. Though Nadia ultimately never signed, Ramona sees it as proof of her disloyalty. Thony pleads with Ramona, insisting Nadia isn't working with the feds. She asks for a chance to handle it herself, to make sure it never leads back to Ramona. Ramona agrees, but warns Thony. If she tips Nadia off, she's as good as dead too. Unaware of the danger she's in, Nadia tells Jorge about a potential investor she secured a meeting with, someone who doesn't trust easily. Jorge is impressed. Thony pulls Nadia aside and asks if she's working with the FBI. Nadia hesitates before admitting she once considered it, but never followed through. Thony warns her to be careful, but Nadia doesn't take the threat seriously until it's too late. Thony calls Ramona, pleading for time. But Ramona is already 2 steps ahead. She's sent someone to kill Nadia. Desperate, Thony calls Fiona, explaining everything. Fiona urges her to stay out of it and let Ramona handle it. Watching through hidden cameras, Jeremy senses something is about to go down. Seeing the location on Fiona's phone, he speeds toward Nadia's house. At her new home, Nadia prepares to leave for her investor meeting. Thony arrives, urgently warning her that Ramona knows about the FBI deal and wants her dead. Panic sets in. Nadia considers running, but Thony knows it won't be enough. Ramona will find her. Thony calms her down, and then suddenly injects her. Nadia collapses. Just then, Jeremy pulls up. FBI agents flood the scene, retrieving Nadia's lifeless body. Among the crowd, Ramona's assassin snaps a picture and sends it to her. Jorge is waiting at the restaurant, unaware that Nadia will never show up. Nadia wakes up in an undisclosed location. Thony is there. She explains, "I helped you die so you could leave." Flashbacks reveal how it was done. After injecting Nadia, Thony convinced Jeremy to help stage her death. At first, he resisted, until she threw his own secret in his face. He's FBI. And if he wants Sin Cara, he's gonna need her help. Jeremy played along, calling in Russo to put on a show. Nadia's body was quietly slipped into Jeremy's truck, which Russo ensured was allowed to leave the scene without suspicion. Now, Nadia is free, but she doesn't see it as salvation. She glares at Thony, betrayed. "So it was you working with the feds this whole time?" Thony insists she didn't know about Jeremy's real identity until now. But it doesn't matter to Nadia. She just started rebuilding her life, only to have it all ripped away again. Thony's deal with the FBI is crumbling. Jeremy informs her that the warehouse locations she provided led to nothing. Jorge had already cleared them out. The feds are getting impatient. He then brings up Ramona's upcoming charity event, which, according to the files Russo obtained, is a front for money laundering. Jeremy pressures Thony to secure an invitation and be on the inside when it happens. Jorge doesn't buy the story about Nadia's overdose. He confronts Ramona, telling her the news reports are BS. Ramona stands by the claim that Nadia was a rat. Jorge argues that the immunity deal wasn't even signed. Anyone could have drawn it up. He accuses Ramona of eliminating Nadia because she didn't want him to succeed in business with her. Ramona dismisses his concerns, saying his judgment is clouded. But she reassures him that she has another investor lined up. Thony meets with Ramona, who thanks her for handling the situation. She then offers Thony a bigger role in her operation, promising that if she stays by her side, she can reclaim real power. When Thony returns to Jeremy, she tells him that Ramona fully believes she killed Nadia, meaning she's officially part of the family now. But Jeremy isn't satisfied. He says they still need an arrest. Thony argues that wasn't the deal. The priority was getting Nadia to safety first. In the middle of their argument, Jeremy realizes something. Nadia is gone. She escaped through the bathroom window and pulled her SIM card, making her untraceable. Thony searches for Nadia, eventually heading home. As she updates Fiona, Nadia suddenly appears in her kitchen. She had hidden in Thony's van and followed her back. She pleads with Thony to help her disappear, saying she worked too hard to escape the slums just to start over again. Thony sneaks into Nadia's office and steals a stack of cash from her safe. When she returns, Nadia checks the cash and reassures them that it will work. To further hide her identity, Fiona provides Nadia with a selection of wigs. As Nadia tries them on, they hear a sudden knock on the door. Thony quickly tells Fiona to hide Nadia. When Thony opens the door, she finds Ramona and Violetta standing there. Ramona hands her an invitation to her charity event. Throughout their conversation, Thony is visibly tense, knowing Nadia is hiding inside. Violetta and Luca play around the house and unknowingly stumble upon Nadia, who is hiding in the closet. When Ramona calls for Violetta, the little girl innocently says she's playing hide-and-seek with the woman in the closet. Ramona moves to check, but Fiona and Chris step in to distract her and gets Violetta to come out. Ramona leaves with Violetta, but the close call shakes everyone. Nadia notices something while hiding in the closet, under a blue light. The bills are marked. The FBI swapped out her money. If she spends it, she'll be tracked. Later, Thony and Fiona arrive at Armin's safe house, a motel. But Jeremy is already watching the place. Thinking fast, they pay a lady, and Fiona distracts him by going off on a rant about how he's been spying on them, while the lady posing as a motel cleaner sneaks into the room. By the time Jeremy inspects it, he finds nothing and leaves. The woman delivers a safe to Thony, which she returns to Nadia. Inside, Nadia finds her passport and a plane ticket, her contingency plan with Armin. She has what she needs to start fresh, but she still needs money. She begs Thony to convince Jorge to help her access her funds, but Thony refuses. She knows there's no trusting anyone in the cartel. Meanwhile, Chris finds an old picture of Camilla with a man wearing a Paradise shirt. He tracks down Paradise premiere events and finds Camilla working in the kitchen. Camilla reveals that her mother is missing, and Chris promises to help her. But before they can leave, immigration officers storm the building. Workers are rushed into a hidden room. At Jorge's firm, Ramona introduces him to AJ Hines, the owner of Paradise Premiere Events, the company that has hosted her charity gala for years. Jorge and AJ discuss business. Ramona provides a dress for Thony to wear to the gala before leaving. Just then, Jorge receives an alert. Someone has been trying to access Nadia's insurance funds. There's only one person it could be: Nadia. Thony finally comes clean, leading Jorge to Nadia. She wishes she could have told him the truth earlier and begs for his help. She needs her money wired to her new identity, Natalie Vasquez. Jorge knows the risks, especially if Ramona finds out, but he ultimately agrees. Jorge transfers $40 million to Natalie Vasquez. Thony drives Nadia to a secret location, where a helicopter is meant to pick her up. Nadia takes one last look at Thony, hoping that one day she'll find freedom too. The helicopter arrives. But as she steps toward the helicopter, Ramona steps out. "The lady in the closet," she says. Before Nadia can react, Ramona stabs her in the stomach. Nadia, gasping for breath, uses her last moments to whisper to Thony, "Get her for us." For Armin. Thony screams as she is dragged onto the plane, leaving Nadia bleeding out on the ground. Fiona arrives home, desperately worried. Chris went to Paradise, where Camilla works, but now he's not answering his phone. Thony says Paradise is the site of Ramona's upcoming charity event. She tells Fiona the truth. Ramona killed Nadia, and now she has to pay. On the day of the charity event, Jorge warns Ramona that the gala makes up the bulk of their annual revenue and suggests moving it. But Ramona refuses, claiming she's already eliminated the mole. Instead, she has a bigger plan. She wants every federal agent at the event, all in one place. Then, she'll eliminate them all. At the FBI, Russo shows Jeremy a photo of Nadia's corpse, left as a warning at her doorstep. Sin Cara is sending a message. Russo's plan is to catch Sin Cara's donors at the event tonight. But Jeremy says that alone won't be enough to arrest Ramona. Then Russo shows him a file she got from accounting. He calls Thony immediately. Chris, Camilla, and other undocumented workers are still being held captive at Paradise. Camilla has a burn which is now infected. Chris bangs on the door, demanding medical attention. 2 men enter and threaten to take Camilla away. She throws liquid into one of the men's faces. They escape. JD and Fiona arrive at Paradise, looking for Chris. Fiona is in the kitchen when Chris and Camilla come running in, desperate to hide. A worker spills chopped carrots on the floor. Fiona grabs a broom and pretending to sweep as the men come searching. Once the coast is clear, Fiona, Chris, and Camilla make a run for it. Jeremy informs Thony that the FBI has traced cartel money through multiple shell companies, all linked to Jorge. But Thony insists Ramona is the real leader, not Jorge. Jeremy says half-breed is better than none. The feds plan to arrest Jorge at the charity event. Thony is furious. If Jorge is arrested, Ramona walks free. She decides to handle things her way. She meets with Jorge and finally tells him the truth. Ramona killed Nadia. Ramona is setting him up. The FBI has enough evidence to take him down. Jorge is stunned. He asks if Thony is working with the FBI. She admits Jeremy has been spying on them, posing as a plumber. Jorge refuses to believe Ramona would betray him, but Thony pushes back. If he gets arrested, does he really want Violetta growing up under Ramona's influence? Shaken, Jorge visits Teresa, Armand's mother. Without giving details, he asks her to take care of Violetta if anything happens to him. Thony convinces Jorge to meet Jeremy. The FBI lays it all out. The evidence against him is solid. Jorge can either go down with Ramona or take a deal. Jeremy offers immunity in exchange for evidence that ties Ramona to the cartel. Jorge reveals Ramona's safe contains everything the FBI needs. However, it's fingerprint locked. Jeremy agrees to secure her fingerprint. After Jorge leaves, Jeremy warns Thony that he can't be trusted. But Thony insists Jorge will come through. Still, they need a backup plan. That's where Camilla comes in. Since coming to the US, she's worked in multiple cartel-linked businesses. She can identify many of Ramona's people. Fiona worries it will force Camilla to relive her trauma, but Camilla insists she's willing to do it. Above the casino, Thony, Jeremy, and a team of agents set up surveillance. The plan is simple. Jorge will introduce Thony to the cartel figures, she'll mark them, and the FBI will identify them based on Camilla's confirmations. Thony passes through the security checkpoint and enters the casino. In a secured room, Russo, Fiona, Chris, and Camilla monitor the live security feed. An FBI agent, posing as a waitress, secures Ramona's fingerprint from her chip. One by one, Jorge introduces Thony to key cartel figures. Corey Davis, owner of Loomis Farms. Camilla confirms he's a cocaine dealer. A.J. Hines, whom Camilla recognizes as Mr. Paradise. 4 more men, all confirmed by Camilla. The plan is working. Until it isn't. Jorge retrieves the chip with Ramona's fingerprint, but then he turns on Thony. He claims to have marked all the donors, but Thony knows better. He's backing out of the deal. He admits it. He never intended to betray Ramona. He only went along with the FBI to get the fingerprint for himself. Sensing something is wrong, Jeremy enters the casino and joins Jorge, Ramona, and Thony at the poker table. As he plays, he lets something slip. Something that makes Ramona suspicious. After Jeremy leaves, she turns to Thony. Is he FBI? Thony says yes. The main reason Ramona invited Thony to the event was for her to identify the feds as she had had run-ins with them. Jorge sneaks into Ramona's safe, uncovering shocking evidence, adoption papers for Violetta and a plane ticket under the name Rosita. Ramona was framing him, planning to take his daughter and leave him behind. Digging further, he finds a small wooden box. Inside? A knife. Jeremy returns to the FBI's setup room, only to find it trashed. Before Jeremy can react, one of Ramona's men ambushes him. A brutal fight breaks out. Thony rushes in, grabbing a fire extinguisher and striking the man. Jeremy finishes him off. Thony tells Jeremy they need to take Ramona down and picks up a gun. The FBI raids the charity event. The operation sends Ramona fleeing while Jeremy arrests A.J. Hines. In the security room, Russo, Fiona, Camilla, and Chris spot Giselle, Camilla's mother. She's inside the casino. Russo immediately moves to retrieve her. Thony confronts Ramona on the rooftop, saying she killed Nadia and it's over for her. But Ramona, unfazed, says all evidence points to Thony. Nadia's blood is all over her van. Before Thony can react, Jorge appears. He confronts Ramona, accusing her of setting him up. But Ramona isn't worried. Her escape is secured. Any minute now, a helicopter will arrive to whisk her away. Except, the helicopter isn't hers. It's law enforcement. As the police swarm in, Jorge presents the ultimate proof. The knife from Ramona's safe, the very one used to kill Nadia. Seriously, why did she keep that? Handcuffed Ramona looks Jorge in the eyes. What kind of man turns on his own family? Jorge's response is simple. The kind you tried to take his daughter from. With that, Russo arrests Ramona for Nadia's murder. Later, Jorge assures Thony that the cartel won't touch her or her family. He's in charge now. He even offers her a job. Thony refuses. She's done. The season ends with Camilla reuniting with her mom. She and Luca sharing a kiss. And Thony getting a call from Derek, which she didn't pick. She's done with cartel drama. Hopefully, that's it for season 3. See you in season 4.